This map is wrong. So is this one. And believe it or not, this one is too. Confused? Well, I hope you're not easily spooked, because today I'm going to explain why the maps you put all your faith in can't actually be trusted.
Mercator rejection. To start with, let's take a look at the classic world map we all know and love. There's our world, ain't she a beaut? There's only one problem though. This isn't what the world looks like. You heard me right. What you're currently looking at here is completely wrong. This map, known as the Mercator projection, is perhaps the most common map in the world and was originally designed by Flemish cartographer Gerardus Mercator in 1569. While our modern version has obviously been updated since the original, the general shape and design is still very similar. There's only one problem though, and it's a biggie: the shape. You see, maps like this represent our world, which is a three-dimensional globe on a two-dimensional plane. This means the land masses are inflated horizontally towards the North and South Pole and vertically close to the equator. So land masses on a flat map don't accurately reflect their real size. In fact, it's difficult to accurately do so at all. A great example of this is Greenland. For hundreds of years, Greenland has loomed over the rest of the world like a giant frozen bully. On the Mercator projection, it's big enough to consume the entirety of South America while still having room for a little United Kingdom snack. In reality, however, South America is around 6.87 million square miles, while Greenland is only around 836,000, making South America over 8 times bigger. Here are the two side by side, and as you can see, the difference is striking. Greenland is absolutely tiny. So if the Mercator projection is so inaccurate, why do we still use it? Well, for starters, it's useful for navigation. In fact, that's what it was first created for. Despite not showing landmass accurately, it does represent distance and angles well. A straight line from Florida to Argentina, for example, will accurately depict the curved path you'd actually take. So old Gerardus was pretty good in that regard. Some of his other maps, like this one depicting the North Pole, are less accurate. But look, this ain't what he's known for. He's known for his world map. The problem with translating a three-dimensional globe to a two-dimensional plane, though, doesn't have a solution. There are creative alternatives, but they all have their own drawbacks. This is the Gauss-Peter projection, and it can be a little jarring at first. It focuses on presenting the area of different landmasses accurately. Greenland is appropriately tiny, as you can see. However, it can only accomplish this by stretching and distorting their shapes. Look at how slim South America is. Looks like someone's been dieting. Then there's this fun one, the Dymaxion projection.
Before you panic, this doesn't show giant holes carved into the world's oceans.
The idea behind this map is that all these individual jagged pieces fold together. Here's how they look converging and back. While this allows the Dymaxion map to represent size and shape well, it's not great representation of distance. I mean, looking at this thing, can you tell how far apart all the continents are at a glance? It's fine if you fold it up, but at that point, why not just look at a globe? Okay, one more. This one is the Miller projection, created by Osborne Maitland Miller in 1942. Rather than an entirely new projection, it uses Mercator as a basis and simply tries to tweak some things. Land masses are closer to an accurate representation of their size and shape, though land north of the equator is still a bit bigger than it should be. So next time you try and point out a country on a map, remember that in reality your finger might be off by a few hundred miles.
Of course, we all have holes in our geography knowledge.
And speaking of, have you ever wondered what the capital of Turkey is? Spoiler alert, it ain't Istanbul. And how about the Great Wall of China? Sure, it's in China, but could you point it out on a map? Well, now you can. Bartholomew has traveled all around this great big world of ours with the help of a cartographer and created the Be Amazed World Map, fully illustrated with famous landmarks, animals, and climate zones. I know I just told you all maps are wrong, but we went with the Miller projection. It's got all the familiarity that you want from a world map, but with much more accurate proportions. It's the best of both worlds. So why not explore the world with Bartholomew? The Be Amazed world map is available for purchase on our official store, and we also created some fun stickers of Bartholomew's World Expedition. The link is in the description, or you can scan the QR code on screen. Now let's get back to some less amazing maps. Size and everything. If you think Greenland was the worst offender on the Mercator projection, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is Africa, and if the Mercator projection is to be believed, it's pretty big. A little bigger than South America, but snugly fitting within Eurasia. Well, Africa might be the most shafted continent on the map because the Mercator projection does not do it justice. Here's how the USA compares to the continent in the Mercator projection. Africa is bigger, sure, but the USA seems to span a good stretch of it. Well, here's how the USA compares to Africa accurately. Whoa, Africa could wear the US like a backpack. The United States of America measures in at a little over 3.61 million square miles, which is pretty large for a single country. In fact, that makes it the fourth largest country by area after Russia, China, and Canada. Africa, however, measures in at a whopping 11.7 million miles, including islands like Madagascar. That's over 3 times the size of the USA. Let's go ahead and throw the third largest country, Canada, into the mix as well. This is what the entirety of North America looks like compared to Africa. It definitely stacks up better and is a little harder to eyeball due to all of Canada's islands and wispy peninsulas. Africa is still bigger, however, as all of North America only measures in at 9,540,000 square miles. In fact, within Africa's mighty borders, you can comfortably fit China, the USA, India, Spain, France, Germany, heck, throw in all of Eastern Europe. There's room. Even the largest country, Russia, still only has a total area of 6.6 million square miles, a bit over half of Africa's landmass. Man, after this info dump, I think I'm going to start seeing the globe like this. Are any other countries that distorted? Is the UK actually the size of the USA? Oh, the Brits would love that. Thankfully, it's not the case. Britain is actually about 40% smaller than it appears on the Mercator projection. See, the northern and southern extremities of the map are stretched, so the further from the equator a landmass is, the more it's distorted. Africa straddling the equator is left relatively unaltered. In the opposite extreme, however, we have Antarctica. Looking at the Mercator projection, the continent appears absolutely enormous, like a huge wall of ice that takes up the bottom third of the globe. In actuality, Antarctica only appears this way due to its position at the very bottom of the map. Here's how the continent would look if it were in the Pacific Ocean. Whoa! Still big, but hardly the behemoth that appears on the Mercator projection. The icy continent measures in at 5.5 million square miles, and as you can see, that makes it much smaller than North America's 9.5 million square miles or South America's 6.87 million square miles. If you're curious, here are the continents in order of size. And here's how they'd be ordered if we all just grew up and accepted that Eurasia is a single continent. Come on, guys, we all know we should. The Kiwi Conspiracy. So you think you're a geography whiz, do you? Well, pop quiz. Take a look at this map and see if you can spot what's wrong with it. Go ahead, I'll wait. Time's up. The truth is that this map is missing something. It's lacking a little Middle-earth magic. That's right, this commercially available map is completely missing the nation of New Zealand. How is that possible, though? While the island nation is fairly small and out of the way, it still boasts a population greater than Ireland and a landmass larger than the United Kingdom. And I've never seen a map forget any of the British Isles. Oh well, maybe it's just a fluke. Nope. Here's a Western Kentucky University forgetting New Zealand, Amazon forgetting New Zealand, Pyongyang Airport forgetting New Zealand, The Simpsons forgetting New Zealand, Domino's Pizza forgetting New Zealand, Risk Legacy forgetting New Zealand, And in case it couldn't get any worse, the New Zealand government's own website for getting New Zealand. Sometimes even when New Zealand is included in maps, it's mislabeled, like here when Russia Today mistook the country for Japan. Brilliant. Look, I know they're both island nations, but come on, man. They're nearly 6,000 miles apart. In 2019, IKEA had to publicly apologize and recall an entire line of maps that excluded New Zealand, and if you think those are all the examples I could find, you're mistaken. There's an entire subreddit dedicated on cataloging maps that forget the poor country. So what gives? Is there a cartographer conspiracy theory that New Zealand doesn't exist? These days, I should be careful making jokes like that, or I might will them into existence. The current leading theory is good old-fashioned laziness, sprinkled with a touch of ignorance. Most maps use the Mercator projection, which is a map projection that puts Europe in the center. This leaves New Zealand towards the bottom right, meaning one could easily forget the island when cropping, copying, or pasting an image. That sounds reasonable, kinda, but it doesn't explain why so many maps also forget Madagascar. Come on, guys, this African island is over twice the size of the UK, is more populous than Greece and Sweden combined, and is a stone's throw away from Mozambique. Even I remember to include Madagascar when I was talking about Africa's size earlier. How can we keep forgetting island nations from maps? Is this the world you want to live in? Center of the world. Have you ever been accused of thinking you were the center of the world? I mean, show me another YouTuber who doesn't think the world revolves around them. If we wanted to pin down the actual center of the world, though, we'd need to break out our old friend, the Mercator projection. While it's hard to pin down perfectly, for my money, the country that's most central in the Mercator projection is about here, the Democratic Republic of Congo. This isn't necessarily because map makers are Congolese supremacists, but because it's fairly evenly aligns the continents into two regions, with the Americans on the left and Africa, Eurasia, and Oceania on the right. However, this alignment of landmasses is also totally arbitrary. Remember that our Earth is a globe, meaning you can easily swivel the center of focus around without any loss in accuracy. For example, here's what the world map would look like if we decided to position the Americas to the east and the rest of the world to the west. Kinda like looking into Bizarro World, but in reality, this is our world. We just don't think of it this way. As another example, here's a Chinese world map that places a great focus on Asia. If you ask me though, maps like this look more like they're making Australia the center of attention. Crikey. Here's another by Reddit user Paradoxical Cabbage placing New Zealand in the center. Well, the Kiwis needed a win. If you want to play around with recentering the world map, there's a fun tool called Country-Centered Map Projections on engaging-data.com that lets you do just that. Here's a map centered on Greenland, and hey, look at that. I was right, clicking on the Congo does more or less get you the default world map. If you've ever been tried for international war crimes, you may also be familiar with this projection of the world map, known as a polar azimuthal equidistant projection. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? This projection is the basis for the emblem of the United Nations, as it doesn't clearly prioritize any individual nation or continent. There are even wackier examples too. This is the South Up map, which places the south of the world up towards the top of the map. Weird, but it makes the very interesting point that we think of our three-dimensional world in a very two-dimensional way. After all, from space you could easily be looking at the world from an angle like this. I hope when aliens finally do arrive, they give their approach some thought. I'd hate for their first impression of us to be the Arctic Circle, or worse, Florida. Old worlds. Even if it's a little funky, it's hard not to look at the Mercator projection and take it as a given. It's so burned into our minds it can be hard to imagine a world without it. But once there was. Map making, or cartography if you want to be smart about it, has existed much, much longer than this imperfect projection. In The Story of Maps, Lloyd Brown calls cartography the oldest variety of primitive art. And that makes sense. After all, one of the first things early man would have sought to represent was their surroundings. This is the Pavlov map, the earliest known map in history. If you can believe it, this ancient map dates back to 25,000 BCE. Yes, 25,000, meaning it was carved towards the end of the Pleistocene era, also known as the Ice Age. Fittingly, it's carved into the tusk of a woolly mammoth. Found in 1962 amidst the Pavlov Hills in modern-day Czechia, the tusk features a beautiful and enigmatic carving, which you can see replicated here. That was first theorized to be a map by Masaryk University's Bohuslav Klima. The map was likely used by hunters to depict the surrounding area, so as hard as it is to believe, these beautiful carvings represent what was once Central Europe. Things must have changed a bit since then. Here's Pavlov now. Jumping forward an astonishing 24,400 years, we find the Imago Mundi. Now I know what you're thinking, and no, Imago Mundi isn't the name of the newest Street Fighter character. Oh hey, look at that. The original Street Fighter actually uses a map with an east-west switch. And it forgot New Zealand. Anyway, back to Imago Mundi. It's the name given to the oldest known map of the world, dating all the way back to the ancient city of Babylon in the 6th century BCE. The map depicts Babylon on the bank of the Euphrates, surrounded by 8 circles believed to represent different regions such as Assyria. Around those is a ring representing the ocean, and beyond the ring are 8 triangles representing further regions of the world. It leaves a lot to the imagination, sure, but considering the map was carved over 2,000 years before the first circumnavigation of the globe in 1522, they didn't have much to work with. Jumping forward a few hundred years, we find the Posidonius map, reconstructed here in 1628. Originally created by its namesake Posidonius, who lived between 135 and 51 BCE, the map depicts the known world to Posidonius, including Europe, North Africa, Arabia, and parts of Asia. Even here we can see the world moving on from the idea the world is flat. In fact, Posidonius himself used the position of the star Canopus to theorize the circumference of the Earth was around 24,000 miles. Shockingly close to the actual circumference of 24,901 miles. In fact, around 100 years before Posidonius, the Greek polymath Eratosthenes theorized the Earth's circumference to be between 24,270 and 25,050 miles, which is a margin of error between 2.4 and 0.8%. Hard to believe we figured this out over 2,000 years ago, and there are still flat earthers out there today. What's in a map? Okay, bear with me here. Let me ask you a question. What is a map? It's harder to answer than you might think. Though most try to depict reality objectively, some are subject to artistry and cultural influence. And with that in mind, a map can take more unconventional forms than you might think. An interesting example of this comes in the form of Australian Aboriginal songlines. These complex songs and dances recount the journeys of mythical creator beings across Australia. The lyrics of the songs refer to various real-world locations and landmarks, which if recited can be used by a knowledgeable person to navigate the land. In visual form, songlines take on a multitude of artistic symbols and patterns that represent these different geographical points. Pretty far removed from the Mercator projection, right? Some songlines can even represent areas of over 2,000 miles. And astonishingly, they were used. Anthropologists have documented individuals successfully navigating hundreds of miles through the unforgiving Australian outback with nothing but a songline to guide them. Jeez, and I still struggle with sat-navs.
While it's difficult to ascertain just how old songlines are, one was recently found to accurately reference 2 bodies of water that dried up over 7,000 years ago in its lyrics.
But songlines aren't the only super unconventional way of mapping. Check out the Native American Catawba map, which is drawn on deerskin. This map doesn't seek to represent geography at all. Instead, each circle represents a different indigenous group in the South Carolina region. Squares, meanwhile, represent Europeans, and the size of each shape the population of the areas. In that way, it's almost like a modern subway map. Instead of geography, the Catawba map is a map of diplomacy, mapping out relationships over space. This drawing of a Native American map from 1825 similarly doesn't measure the land in terms of distance, but time, mapping out how long it takes to journey between different places and what could occur along the way. Finally, I'd like to introduce you to these Amasilik carvings. No, these aren't gnarled branches I pulled off a tree, they're maps, if you can believe it. These three-dimensional wooden carvings are the work of the Tunamit people from back in the 1880s. The wooden carvings are meant to represent the shape and proportional size of the coast of Greenland, which the Tunamit call their home. These maps in particular were carved by a hunter named Kunit in 1885. They're beautiful, but I wouldn't know how to begin reading them. Probably why I'm not an Inuit hunter, huh? YouTube is way more lucrative anyway. Google craps. While some maps are incorrect due to honest mistakes, a lack of information, or the difficulties of map making in general, others are a little more nefarious. You see, some maps are wrong on purpose. Dun dun dun! For example, in 1906, explorer Robert Peary collaborated with the San Francisco Call to create this map. You may notice there's an entirely new continent there called Crockerland, which sounds like the most boring theme park ever. Peary claimed to have discovered the landmass and named it after the wealthy banker who happened to be funding his expeditions, George Crocker. Clearly, Peary believed the discovery of a new continent named after his benefactor would open their pockets a little more. Of course, Crockerland is a crock of old baloney. Outside of personal gain, maps can also be censored or edited for political reasons. One such example is this, a map depicting the non-existent nation of Kurdistan. While this might look harmless, posting it could be enough to get you banned on certain social media. According to former censor at Facebook Amin Durkawi, the map was a secret violation of Facebook censorship standards not included in the regular community guidelines. The reason? Well, to abbreviate history, the Kurds make up an ethnic group in the Middle East. After the First World War, they ended up without a country of their own as the former Ottoman Empire negotiated land division with the Brits. This map depicts a theoretical Kurdistan had it been founded, but as that would involve taking away land from Turkey, posting it could land you in hot water. Another huge issue with map accuracy comes when they need to depict disputed territories. One example is that of Kashmir, a region claimed by both India and Pakistan. As neither nation will budge on the claim, mapmakers need to make a decision when it comes to depicting the borders of the region. How do they handle this? Well, Google will change their result depending on who's looking. That's right, Google literally redraws the map. If you view the region from Pakistan, Kashmir appears with a dotted line depicting its disputed nature. If you view the region from India, however, the region is fully within the nation's borders. Even the USA isn't immune to this and has contested boundaries with Canada, the Bahamas, and Cuba, to name a few. Of course, political influence on map making can be just as silly as it is complex. Former Vice President of the United States Dick Cheney got Google Maps to censor his house from their platform, replacing the building with blurry pixels. Thankfully, it's uncensored now if you ever want to pretend you're a bird taking a mid-air dump on it. As it turns out, though, Google Maps frequently blur, edit, or censor areas of their maps on request. The Marcoussis nuclear site in France appears as a group of pixels, as does the Montluçon prison. It can be easy to view maps uncritically as depictions of reality. However, I hope I've demonstrated that at the end of the day, maps are still made by people that are susceptible to bias and political pressure. Either that, or France is currently turning their prisoners into atomic super soldiers and is covering up the evidence. Wacky worlds. So we've seen how art, culture, and politics can redraw the world. Sometimes, however, maps are just wrong. Take this Korean world map from 1402, for instance. Yes, this weird blob is supposed to represent the whole world. In the center is an amalgamation of China and India. This nub represents Korea with a mirrored Japan underneath for some reason. Oh, and this over here? This is Africa, with Europe above it. Pretty unrecognizable, right? Well, it's likely just a matter of priorities. When it came to mapping their own land, historically Korea was quite accurate, and beautiful too. Look at this fun 18th century Korean map depicting the different provinces in different colors. Speaking of more artistic maps, this is the Fool's Face map, and it depicts the world as we know it ghoulishly plastered over the face of a jester. It was created sometime after 1587, but by who? Nobody knows. Around the face are various Latin phrases such as "the number of fools is infinite" and "vanity, vanity, all is vanity." This suggests that the map was intended as some kind of satirical statement that either the world itself is foolish or our attempts to understand it are foolish and egotistical. Well, it's at least higher effort than today's political cartoons. The map itself doesn't look too inaccurate for the 16th century either, which is more than I can say for this next one. Take a look. What landmass do you think it's depicting? Some Greek island? Maybe a sideways Jamaica? Madagascar on the wrong side of Africa? Nope. This is actually a map of Baja California, which, if you aren't aware, isn't an island. The reason for this cartoonish cartography comes down to simple laziness. When California was first chartered in 1533 by the Spanish, they didn't actually bother to charter it. They simply arrived, assumed it was an island, and went about their business. Amazingly, this mistake persisted for another 200 years. In fact, California actually takes its name from a Spanish work of fiction about a mythical island named California. It wasn't until the Spanish explorer Juan de Anza decided to literally walk from Arizona to California in 1775 that the world finally caught on. Last but not least, I'd like to share with you this, a map of our square and stationary Earth by Professor Orlando Ferguson in 1893. Now I know what you're thinking. 1893? Isn't that 2,133 years after Eratosthenes proved the Earth is round? First off, congrats on the quick math there. The Greeks posited the world is spherical in 240 BCE, which was information inherited by the Romans, which then spread throughout Europe. Despite popular misconceptions by the early Middle Ages, the belief in a spherical Earth was widespread. So how did we end up with this? Well, Ferguson was a die-hard Christian, and he seemed to think the Bible made it clear the Earth was flat. To make sense of this, he placed the continents in the middle of a mold with the ocean around it inside a large crater of ice. Modern flat earthers, yes, really seem to believe in a similar setup with the continents in the middle and an expansive plain of ice on the perimeter. Jeez. As for who this multiple thousand-year-long spherical Earth conspiracy benefits, hey, you got me. Maybe the globe industry? Sorry, Flat Earthers, looks like you'll have to add the Be Amazed YouTube channel to your list of organizations paid off by Big Globe.
Before I go, don't forget to pick up your own Be Amazed map with the link in the description or the QR code on screen, so you can decorate your home with the greatest map in the world.
Man, that was a pretty mind-blowing journey, if you'll forgive the pun. I don't know if I'll ever see the world the same way again. Which map projection messed with your head the most? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.